All right, so I think we're gonna move on to SPv3.
All right. So what makes SPv3 improved by SPv2 that you recently were working on?
Well, first of all, we've reassessed how we add new areas in. The areas are a lot more relevant to the mood and style of the map. We've also totally redone the tag set, and the entire thing is powered by open source, which gives us all sorts of new things like hijacking, armor abilities, vehicle EMP, boosting, new behaviors for weapons like single shot when you zoom in on the battle rifle, or drain on the plasma pistols, as well as a lot of new scripting stuff that makes the missions just flow a lot better and gives us more capabilities and what we want to do.
Do you want to talk about some of the new things added that we are seeing in the video, such as equipment?
Well, we call it a flashlight replacement system, and this is going to be open source when we release our first set of maps. We call it flashlight replacement because it's not just an equipment system or an armor ability system. You know, it's pretty robust in what you can do with it. But what we're using it for is we're using it for armor abilities right now. The first one that we show off in this video is Sprint, and unfortunately it doesn't have any first-person animations. It's something we're going to try to do, but we're not sure if it's going to be really possible. We also have what we call Health Regen, which is an armor ability, which gives you the Halo 2 and 3 health system. So once your shields are charged and you stop taking damage, you charge no version of active camouflage in this map, where you can pick it up and then use the flashlight key to activate active camouflage.
And so does each one of these have like a different cool timer also or not?
It depends on what you're using. The regen is just a passive armor ability, so it's always active, and the Q button just activates your flashlight. Sprint has its own cooldown timer, so does Visor, but the active camo, even though it's not in this video, we plan to link it to the player shields. So the player shields will drain as they power their active camouflage. So it should avoid a lot of the situations like in Reach and Halo 4 where you just kind of have to, crouch walk around with camo, or Halo 2 where you just kind of activate camo and, wait for your shields to recharge, just to hide. So we hope that, because we're tuning all of this just for single player and not for multiplayer. So we're not as limited as Bungie and 343 were in it. So I thought the active camouflage will be really cool because, you have to think, is it more important for me to get from point A to point B or assassinate this target? Because then I have to wait and let my shield recharge, and you can't really use it, to run out, assassinate everything, and then, just start opening fire, because by that point, you'll have no shield. We hope it'll encourage more stealthy behavior than more run and gun behavior.
Exactly.
So the elites have a few new weapons. Can you go into detail about them?
Yeah, the first is our, that you probably noticed, is the gun with the golden beam, and that's our focus carbine, which shares a lot of similarities with the focus rifle from Reach, but we think it's a lot more fair and more forgiving. And the second one is the gun with the pink projectiles, and that's our new particle carbine, which is a new take on the carbine from Halos 2, 3, and 4. The main difference being that it uses particle beam rifle technology instead. So instead of having physical ammo, it has a heat meter, which introduces some new gameplay options, which we're going to go into detail in a vidoc in the future. But those are two of our 3 new long-range Covenant weapons.
So you have new Covenant weapons, but what about human weapons?
We prefer to focus on new Covenant weapons, just because each time you introduce a new Covenant weapon, you create a new enemy as well. Especially once you give that weapon to multiple different ranks. It just creates a lot more situations and scenarios for you to have in encounters. While when you add in a human weapon, you're just really giving the player something new to use, as well as the Flood. But that's, the Flood just use all the weapons the same way. They just kind of run and shoot at you. In short, we like to focus on new Covenant weapons rather than new human weapons because we can be more creative, and it creates more opportunities for interesting gameplay.
Oh yeah, I can see that then. So anyway, also, is this also going to be like your other single-player versions where you, basically increase the BSP also, you add more layers, add new areas, stuff like that? new encounters?
The process of putting in new areas can be tricky sometimes, but A10 is using some SPv2 areas with some other new areas that we've done. The level is overall shorter than the original public beta we put out, which took about an hour and a half to complete. I can do the new one in about 40 minutes, and I can do the stock areas on Anniversary in about 20 on Legendary. So A10 is roughly twice as long. A30 has 2 new areas, one which is based off the alpha base described in the book Halo the Flood. The other is kind of a small little alpine area where you have to rescue some Marines that have been taken prisoner by the brutes, kind of like the end of Sierra 117 Halo 3. And then A50, which is Truth and Reconciliation, unfortunately, just the way it's structured, the only way we could add in new areas is to do them inside the ship, but I think that area is long enough and it doesn't really need them. And then, actually, I'm going to announce here today at CE3 that you can expect B40 in the first wave of SPv3 maps as well, which previously wasn't planned. In that map, actually, there's a limit in Halo on how many squads you can have for encounters overall, and that's 1024. And I think we're around 9-something right now, just with the stock areas. So we plan to add in new areas into Assault in the Control Room, but we do not plan to, add in, a huge extension.
So with these new areas, you mentioned how you're gonna have to rescue some people in B30. Are there gonna be like new story additions to this too, with dialogue and stuff?
For A30, B30 is Silent Katana. For A30 is Halo. Sorry, I'm really used to talking in code names. We have one new character. We call him Uncle Spot, and he's basically like Auntie Dot from Halo Reach, but he's a dude, and he's kind of the AI that's on the command shuttle that's mentioned by Foehammer early in the Halo mission. And he kind of, sits in the sky in the command shuttle, and he kind of gives you intel. He's basically kind of like a second Cortana, since we don't have, Jen Taylor, who voice acted Cortana. And he's kind of like, he's a little bit outside of the scope of what you and Cortana experience. He's kind of like the eye in the sky.
So with him, he basically adds a whole new gameplay variant to it.
I wouldn't go as far as say that. He's really kind of our way of having someone else who's outside of the area you're in to give you information and intel. And kind of give you objectives that are more about the whole global, or I guess can't really call it global because you're on a Halo ring, but the overall conflict on the ring. He'll be the one that says, hey, we've got reports of Marines captured over here. Can you capture this base? We need a forward command post, to reroute all of our troops to.
All right. So there's just little new side missions involved in the thing.
Yeah,
it's more like it.
He's a minor character, but it's a lot better than just having text appear on screen giving you an objective or a waypoint. It says like go here without any explanation.
True. So also we already know that you have CMT as brutes and elites, but are they releasing anything else new? Are there going to be any new enemies that you can tell us about?
Yeah, you can see in this video we have our new Jackal skirmishers, which are kind of a cross between Jackals and skirmishers from Reach. And they're really cool on A30 because it's such a wide open area. These guys can move quickly from place to place. They can jump up on towers and stuff. It's just another new little enemy that adds like some fresh blood into the map. Because we've all played the map before with grunts, jackals, and elites. And while the brutes are a new enemy too, they don't really, use the A30 environment to their advantage. They just can't because, they're big, heavy creatures. But the jackal skirmishers, really can dart around, leap up to structures that other enemies can't, And they're another new enemy that we're going to have throughout SPv3. But they're introduced in the mission Halo, A30.
All right. Another question is also I know that you said you had also new dialogue from this Uncle Spot. What about also like maybe new cinematics that can happen in certain areas, or will there not be that?
Halo 1 just in general is very light on cinematics, and since we're pretty much putting these new areas in the middle editions. For us to pull you out of, the combat and put you into a cinematic, would be kind of jarring. Like, off the top of my head,
True.
the only times you have cinematics in the middle of a mission in Halo 1 is when you're going up the gravity lift in Truth and Reconciliation. When you hit a control switch for, like, the cartographer in B30, or in C10, 343 Guilty Spark, when you first find the Flood. So it's just not really in the spirit of Halo 1, in my opinion, to be putting in cinematics in the middle of the missions, unless there's really, a big story moment. But since we're only trying to extend the levels, it doesn't really work for us like that.
Yeah.
So with SPv3, open source is required.
Yeah, I mean, just our entire gameplay is, built around the idea of, new weapon behavior, some behaviors. Our new vehicle health system is reliant on OS. Then there's the armor ability system. And then there's the fact that, we're using some pretty high definition stuff, so we need the map file size enhancements. For us to make a .map version, it would basically be like stripping half the features, which we don't really want to do because we put so much time into this stuff. But I do want to say, though, that if you don't have the greatest computer, and frankly, I don't have the greatest computer either. All right. Well, basically, with the later versions of OS, you can disable all the OS graphics add-ons, so you can get Halo 1 like stock map performance without any of the fancy shadering or fancy lighting or the normal maps and stuff. So even if you can't, if your computer can't play A50, the release that we have right now, you should be able to play all these new maps.
But no, I do like this single player version 3. It does look a lot better and it sounds better than version 2. Because I just liked whenever version 2 was announced and all that, and you had all these new encounters you guys were going for. And I know that single player version 2 was canceled, which made me really, really sad. But now version 3 is coming out, and I'm really, really hyper. So if you guys do cancel version 3, I will find a way to get rid of you.
Well, I doubt that's gonna happen. We've planned everything out a lot better. Initially we're not focusing on the entire game like we did before. We're just focusing on the first half, and then everything before 3 and after will be done at a later date.
Yeah.
With single player version 2, we had this idea of extending the levels, but none of us had actually designed single player levels or even scripted them. So it was a learning process. And then eventually we realized, we have to, we've extended the level this much, and now we need to work it back all the way to, the intersection point, which is why you ended up with an A30 that was about, 4 hours long. But didn't really have anything. That version of A30, it didn't have any of the open-ended encounters that A30 is known for. Both of the new areas for SPv3 A30, for the one where you have to rescue the Marines, I want to say there's 3 areas you have to rescue them from, but there's probably about 6 or 7 different ways you can go about it, whether it be in a hog or in a ghost or on foot. And then the other area, the Alpha Base area, I want to say there's at least 9 to 12 different ways you can replay that encounter in a different way. So it's a lot more in the classic spirit of the A30 than, endless canyons, that don't really make much sense like what you're doing here.
Anyone else you would like to thank for this project?
Oh, well, the whole CMT team, Corman, Firescythe, and CV for all their work on open source, Shadow Spartan for helping us fix a lot of problems that we've encountered. The Halo C community as a whole for, always wanting to play our stuff. I was looking on Halo maps the other day, and on the top, 100, whatevers, we're throughout it. So it's really nice to know that even though it's an old game, we still have a lot of people who really enjoy what we do. Just type in CMT Halo on YouTube, and it's really nice to see, just how much love we've got from the community. So I just want to thank everyone who's played our maps or downloaded them.
Well, thank you for coming to CE3.
Anytime.
Yeah. We'll see you next year, hopefully.
Hopefully next year we'll be here with the Flood half of the campaign, when we have some really cool ideas for that, because with open source we can allow units to be infected as well as transform. So you can only imagine how many different ways we can manipulate that. with the flood.
God, I really wish I had a time machine. I want to see this. But no, all right then. Well, I guess we'll go on with the rest of the show. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Masters. That was awesome.
Anytime.